So, very warm welcome. I'm Nicola Enoch from Down Syndrome UK, and very pleased this evening to welcome you all to hear about social care and what a joyful subject it is. So, Mirjana is someone who we've only connected on Facebook, as I do with so many of you, I'm sure. But I've sort of been aware for some time that there's a bit of a gap in knowledge amongst us as parents. And that Mirjana seemed terribly knowledgeable, and whenever people were asking questions, she seemed to have very sort of practical advice and support. So I just reached out to her and invited her to see if she'd be interested in sharing, and bless her, she's knocked up a full presentation and is giving up her time this evening, really just as a fellow parent, I think, to try and sort of, support and empower us all. So I'll hand over to Mirjana. The session is being recorded, as you'll have heard. I will continue the recording throughout, but when it's shared, we'll edit it to cut at the end of the talk. But we do record the questions only because as a charity, we try and use some of those questions, if they're quite generic, for creating like frequently asked questions and so on. So they won't be shared. And Mirjana's kindly agreed that her slides can be shared, so they'll be emailed out to you. So you don't need to make, if you're the type of person who likes to make notes, then do. But don't feel you have to write everything down. So over to you, Mirjana, to kindly continue and share your wisdom.
Thank you, Nicola. Good evening, everybody. I will start sharing my screen. Hopefully that will work. Okay. Can people see the screen? Is that all good? Very good. Okay. So I will do the presentation. The only thing Nicola didn't mention, and I would like to ask you, is if you have any questions, if you can pop the questions into the chat. It should appear on your right-hand side. Just pop the questions into the chat, and then when I finish the whole presentation, Nicola will take us through questions, and I will try to answer as many as possible, depending on the time. So my name is Mirjana Fowle, as Nicola said. I'm a mother and economist, so I'm not a lawyer. And I'm here really to share my knowledge as a parent. So my son Alex is 20. He has Down syndrome and autism, and he's currently in residential college. So we were referred twice to social services, to Children's Disability Team, which is Children's Social Care Team. Once when Alex was 14. We were turned down then. We had the assessment over the phone, and after 5 minutes of the assessment, the person was asking me, sorry to stop you, but what is Down syndrome? And after that, the next day I got a call and we were turned down. It turned out it was some student who wasn't very knowledgeable, and so I was devastated, but that all went, and I didn't have it in me to fight that. Second time we were referred to social care for support when Alex was 16, and at that time they treated it really as a safeguarding issue. And they wanted to talk to my daughter. They went to her school behind our back. I mean, they literally treated it as a safeguarding issue. And then they issued a report saying, well, we think this family needs help, but we will give it over to transition team and then they can deal. And in the report somewhere it was saying how my son suffers from Down syndrome, which I thought was appalling. And so I then vowed to educate myself and basically learn so well about social care and the Care Act and all the legislation that I can secure for my son essentially the social care package that he needs. I went to all the webinars, trainings, I did a lot of reading, and I even ended up on the website that social workers use to do their own training, so that I really know what I'm up against. And we ended up basically, when the social worker started working with us, I actually had much better knowledge than her in social care. So, so really this is kind of the summary of some of my experience and stuff that I learned. So the session content and objectives, really this is just what we will be talking tonight about. So This will be about social care support after the age of 18, so not before, because at the age of 18 there is assumption that our young people have the legal rights and mental capacity based on the Mental Capacity Act, unless proven otherwise. I will also be talking how do you get to adult social care via transition team. Arguably, there is an easier route. If you already have the social care support from the children's services, then it's easier to get to the adult social care, but I will not be talking about that. So the talk will be structured in these 5 points. So the CARE Act, I will talk about 4 stages of securing a social care package, direct payments and employing personal assistants. This will be mostly from my own experience. Then top tips, again, from things that I heard, things that I experienced, it might help you. And at the end, I wanted to just talk about what to do when things do not go to plan. Just hopefully it helps. Right. The CARE Act, this is really the dry part of the presentation. The good thing is that CARE Act is your friend, really. It's a very good legislation. It's a piece of legislation that reformed adult social care after about 60 years by creating a single consistent legal framework for how local authorities should provide care and support to adults and their carers. And it's published in 2014, so it's known as the CARE Act 2014. It is accompanied by the Care and Support Statutory Guidance, which is a very detailed document that explains how local authorities and other partners should implement the legal duties placed on them by the CARE Act. And believe it or not, I've read both from cover to cover, so it wasn't fun. So here are the 10 principles and duties that CARE Act placed on local authorities. The 2, I think, most important ones, which I would like to talk a little bit more than the others, is well-being and new rights for carers. So promoting well-being is single most important concept of the CARE Act. Local authorities must promote the well-being of individuals by considering various aspects of their lives, including their dignity, health, relationships, and social and economic well-being. So I will talk later on about 9 areas of well-being and what really means in well-being, which is written in the CARE Act. But well-being is really, really important, not only for the person that you care for, but also for you as a carer. And this is because the Act introduces a clear focus on carers' well-being and gives them the new rights, taking account of the impact that caring basically has in their lives. So I wasn't planning to talk more about carers' rights, but I did want to just acknowledge a few really important things for you as carers. In addition to well-being principle being applied to carers as well as to cared for, the carers now have right to carers assessment, right to a package of care and support, right to work, train, have hobbies, and have a life on their own. And this one is particularly important because there is a right that you provide care only if you're willing and able to your young person, and the local authority needs to meet the need where there is a gap, where you cannot do so. So if you wish to work or train or have hobbies or do something else and not spend your time on caring, the local authority needs to acknowledge that. Right. There are other 8 duties and principles which I will just rattle through briefly. Independence is promoted by supporting individuals to stay independent and well as long as possible. Local authorities have duty to respect individual needs, wishes, and outcomes, so the support is person-centered, tailored, and customized. The Act puts an onus onto local authorities for early intervention to prevent, reduce, or delay the need for care and support from escalating. So they absolutely have to prevent family getting into crisis. Duty to safeguard adults to ensure they are protected from a risk of abuse and neglect. Duty to provide information and advice to people about care and support so giving them choice, including financial information. The Act introduces the principle of partnership for local authority to work with individuals and communities to find solutions and promote the integration of care and health services. Care Quality Commission, as an independent regulator, has an oversight of health and social care. And local authorities have a duty to actively develop and maintain a diverse, high quality and sustainable market for care and support services. Phew, so that's the dry bit out of the way, and now we can come to the fun stuff. So there are 4 stages of securing social care. First is the needs assessment, eligibility, care and support plan, and financial assessment. And I will go through each of them in details. So needs assessment is also known as the Care Act assessment or social care assessment. This is a legal document. So when and if you have the assessment done, please ask for a copy. Make sure that the draft includes your comments and that you're happy with the document, because this is a legal document. If your child is likely to need support from adult social care services, then the assessment needs to be carried out before they reach the age of 18, and this is so that the whole social care package, if it is due, kicks in after their 18th birthday. So this is the idea, this is ideal. So if your child is not 18, I would encourage you to approach the transition team, ask if they allocated a social worker to your child, and so that you can then chase them and make sure that the assessment is scheduled before the 18th birthday, so that you can hopefully procure the services that the child needs and set everything in motion and start after they turn 18. So aim of the assessment is to identify what needs your young person may have, how those needs impact on their well-being, and the outcomes they hope to achieve in their life. So outcomes are very important. I will talk about outcomes again. So the routes to needs assessment, how do you get the care assessment, is through a transition team. So transition team is part of the social care services, which sits in between children's team and adult social team. And they take care of young people who have EHCP between the ages 16 to 25. If the EHCP ceases before 25, then I think in theory the person should move to adult social care team. The easiest route to get the assessment is through EHCP annual review. So based on the SEND code of conduct, transition team should be sitting on the annual review from year 9 onwards, because from that age, the EHCP should contain preparation for adulthood. So all the steps that need to happen as a transition to adulthood. If it doesn't happen from year 9, maybe it happens in year 10. I think for us, somebody came and sat down at year 11 after I pushed them and asked for it. So it happened slowly but surely. So that's the easiest route, and then you get to their radar screen, and then you can chase them and get the social worker allocated. If that doesn't happen, referrals can also be made by school or by any health professionals, for example, CAMS. I suspect they can also be made by the GP. Referrals made by the professionals have a bit more weight than if you do them yourself. However, the Act clearly states that you can do the self-referral. The threshold for having the assessment is very low, and the local authority has the duty to do the assessment. Even if you just go, you can go online, fill in the form, or even pick up a phone and call them, and they have a duty of care to do the assessment and understand if your young person has eligible needs for care and support. Okay, right. Next one is conducting care assessment. So the best way to do this is at person's home. It's the most relaxing. The young person is most relaxed. You can prepare yourself the best. Definitely not a good idea to do it over the phone, as I experienced. The care assessment should be person-centered, so tailored to person's needs, and carer blind. Carer blind means that all needs need to be listed, basically without whether the carer exists for those needs or not. So the carer should be completely disregarded and all the needs should be listed in the assessment. The Care Act also requires local authority to provide a qualified assessor. So this is a legal requirement that assessor needs to have skills, knowledge, and competence to carry out an assessment. Now, a word of caution or a bit of pros and cons here. So I was aware of this point, but then when social worker came to our door, it turned out she was brand new and it was her first time to do the assessment. And we were wondering whether, because my son has dual diagnosis, it's quite complex. We were wondering whether this will be a good idea, and we decided to stick with the lady. And it turned out to be really, really good because she was very enthusiastic. She wrote absolutely fantastic document. Both the care assessment and my carer's assessment were written with a lot of compassion, and it really, she secured us a good package. So in this case, I think we did the right thing not to insist on fully qualified assessor. The reasonable adjustments need to be made, and the whole family approach is very important. So when the assessment is done, it's done looking at the whole family. So who's around this young person, who lives at home, who's supporting the person. So it's really important to take the whole family approach. Also, you can involve advocate if you wish. So advocacy and support are encouraged, and you're entitled to have somebody supporting you through this process. Now, time frame is not really stipulated in the statutory guidance. Nowhere it says that it should be completed within 3 months. However, statutory guidance does say that the timing should be reasonable. So the social local authority should, in reasonable time, complete the assessment and finalize it. And usually people take this as 12 weeks or 3 months. So it's basically, you should, if it's not happening, you're not getting a draft back, then you should chase it and you should then, explain why you think this is not reasonable. How to prepare for the assessment. Now, you can actually ask for the list of questions in advance to prepare. I asked the social worker to send me a form, and I filled in the whole form. So by the time she came through the door, I had the whole thing filled in, everything was written down. And when she finished the assessment and chatted with us, she actually took the form that I filled in with her and used it to fill in the document. So I was certain that my input was acknowledged and included. So that was really useful. It's also important to put together a complete picture, no matter how small thing you think it is. Everything should be included, because it's really then later more difficult to include it again. So sometimes it's good to maybe do a diary for a week or two. Every day you write a little bit down what kind of care your young person needs. And then when it comes to the assessment, you will have a complete picture. Now, the outcomes, I mentioned that outcomes are really important, and care and support plan is then tailored essentially to deliver these outcomes. So it's important what young person wants to achieve in their life. If they don't, if they just want to sit at home, for example, then there's no point in for a local authority to pay PA to take them to cinema or take them outside. So these outcomes are really important to tailor the care and support plan. And all the aspects are important. So whether the person wants to go to college, have a specific training, find a job, What about relationships? Do they want to go and do some activities like bowling or theater or whatever? And where they want to live in the future. I think this is really important because the social worker will be helping you to secure that setting potentially where the person wants to live. They don't have to, but it's always good to have them on your side and that they know what's coming. It's also important to capture the fluctuating needs and be very clear which aspects of care and support you're willing and able to do and which not. So, for example, if you have a work and you have a job and you're working from 9 to 3, then you need to be clear and say, look, I need support for these hours because I will be working. As a carer, you have the right to work, and therefore the local authority needs to find a solution how the young person can be supported in those hours if, for example, they are sitting at home. Right. Now there are 10 areas of the needs assessment based on the form that social workers fill in. So managing and maintaining nutrition is about food preparation, cooking, shopping, things like that. Can they also eat safely? Can they drink safely? Do they choke? Is there any needs there during eating? Second one is maintaining personal hygiene, so all about showers, bath, nail care, shaving, period care for girls, managing toilet needs, being appropriately clothed. So do they need help shopping for clothing? Can they choose appropriate clothes for the weather? So when they go outside, if it's snowing, do they just go out in a t-shirt or do they put something, to warm? Then being able to make use of the home safely. I think that's basically self-explanatory. So can they use the kitchen knives? Can they use the oven, the microwave? Also, things like, for me, it's always what if somebody rings the doorbell, if Alex opens, would he let somebody into the house because he's vulnerable and he just trusts everybody? Or would he say, no. So things like that, being safe at home. The next one is maintaining a habitable home environment. It's about cleaning. What happens in emergency? If there is a fire, then would the person know what to do? Maintenance and repairs. Can the person pay the bills? Manage money. All about basically managing home. Developing and maintaining family or other personal relationships, so all about relationships. Do they need help if they want to see a friend? Do they need to have somebody to accompany them and to help them to go out and meet a friend? That's also important. Accessing and engaging in work, training, education, or volunteering. So this is all encouraged, and if they need help, then this should be supported. There is a little bit of a gray field here because it overlaps with the SEND team, with the education and the needs stated in EHCP, but the CARE Act is very clear that this is also area for the social care. And I think especially once the HCP stops, then even more so than the onus is on social care to support this. Making use of necessary facilities or services in the local community, including public transport and recreational facilities or services. Can they use the public transport? Can they go to, be included in the local community? Do they need help to go out? Etc. And then the last one is about caring responsibilities. So whether they are carrying any caring responsibilities that the adult has for a child. Now, this actually is officially one of the areas of the assessment. However, for us, this wasn't on the form at all, but instead we had making decisions and organizing your life. So that was one area at the end that was included. and it's all about making decisions and can you go shopping, can you manage money, can you organize your time, book a GP, go to hospital appointments and stuff like that. Now, all these areas equal, so there's no hierarchy to them at all. They're all important. And for all of them, there is a question, basically, how much support do you need? Do you need it during the day or during the night? And how many times? Is it once a day, 3 times a day, during meal times? So it's really important that you're very clear on the needs in each of the areas so that they can be correctly reflected in the assessment. And the conclusion of the form, when the assessment is done, is actually impact on well-being. So all the needs from all these areas, like how do they impact on a person's well-being? Now, so that was the first step. The second step is the eligibility. There are 3 questions for eligibility, and all 3 must be met in order for needs to be eligible for local authorities' support. The first question is, do the needs arise from physical or mental impairment or illness? For this, there doesn't need to be any diagnosis, so you don't need any official diagnosis. As long as you have needs arising from physical or mental impairment or illness, your needs will be eligible. The second question is all about achieving outcomes. So outcomes in all of these 10 areas that I was just talking about. Do the needs mean that the person is not able to achieve 2 or more outcomes? Now, being unable to achieve an outcome can be twofold, 2 different ways. One is the person is not able to achieve it without assistance, including prompting and supervision. So if person is able to use, for example, the microwave, but cannot do it without supervision, or if it has a problem, doesn't know how to solve problems. So Alex learned to use microwave, but then one day he forgot a fork in the plate that he was putting in the microwave. So he needs to be supervised because he wouldn't know what to do if that microwave exploded. Luckily, we were next to him, and so we took it out. But he doesn't know. So he can prepare breakfast and other in the kitchen. He can put it into microwave, and once it was very hot and he dropped everything, all the glass went all over the kitchen. And then he basically came to us and said, please help. So he cannot be unsupervised. And in this case, he's not able to achieve the outcome, so feed himself. The other option is the person is able to achieve it without assistance, but doing so causes significant pain, distress, or anxiety. Doing so endangers or is likely to endanger health or safety of themselves or others, and takes significantly longer than would normally be expected. So the task takes significantly longer. Okay, and then the third question, is there a significant impact on the person's well-being by having the needs identified? And these are the areas of well-being listed in the Care Act. So there are 9 of them. You can see, so it's a personal dignity, physical and mental health and emotional well-being, protection from abuse and neglect, control over their own day-to-day life, social and economic well-being, domestic, family and personal relationships, participation in work, education, training or recreation, suitability of living accommodation, and the individual's contribution to society. So at the end of the form, the social worker lists how the needs impact the person. And it's really important that you list all of the areas of well-being where you think. So, for example, in our case, the social worker came and I think she just took about last half. And I insisted that other things are listed there because Alex wouldn't be able to have a shower or a bath without supervision, and therefore his personal dignity is impacted. physical and mental health and emotional well-being, etc. So I kind of listed everything that I thought was important, and the social worker agreed with me because I think it adds weight to the needs. So if the answer to all these three questions is yes, then the person has eligible needs. And then we proceed to the next step, which is care and support plan. I'm just checking the timing. So the care and support plan is really a document detailing needs identified by the assessment, whether those needs are eligible or not and to what extent, and how is local authority going to meet those needs, how often, who's going to meet them, etc. The document itself looks similar to the assessment, but it's not quite the same. So it lists all the outcomes. It's supposed to have information and advice, but the biggest difference is really personal budget. So this is the amount of money that person gets to pay for the care and support that meet eligible needs, and the personal budget must be sufficient. So what is really important is that needs are identified as number of hours, and so budget needs to be sufficient. If you cannot find help or purchase the services for the budget that they gave you, then the budget needs to be increased so that matches the market circumstances. So if you need to pay people more, then the budget needs to reflect that, because the need is always expressed in number of hours. So that's all. And then the only other thing I want to say is ask for the copy of the care and support plan. We really struggled with this. The first one we never got. The most recent one, I redid the whole assessment and care and support plan when Alex went to residential college. They sent it apparently by Royal Mail, and we never received it. So yes, so I still have to chase that. Now, I thought it would be interesting for you just to see what kind of support person can get from the social care. So it a lot depends on the local authorities. There are differences between local authorities because some of it is at their discretion. But in general, this is how the support looks like. So people can get support in the independent living. They can get help if they live at home with their family. They can move to supported living. They can be at residential care. You can get short breaks, or also known as respite care. Shared lives, I don't know if everybody knows what shared lives are, so I thought I'll let you know. So shared lives is a scheme to support adults with learning disability, mental health problems, or other needs that make it harder to live on their own. It's basically so the person is matched with an approved carer, usually family, that shares care and support for that person with their own family. And this can be a respite, or the person can go and visit this new family during daytime, or it's flexible. It's an alternative to traditional types of care like care homes. Social work immediately asked us this. This is also a cheaper option for local authority than the care home. But I actually also heard some good examples, so it might work for some people. For us, this wouldn't work. And there is also transport that you can get from social care. Some local authorities pay for activities. Our package, for example, consists of the PA hours, which is this part of outreach. So PA comes to our home and then helps Alex either at home or taking him into the community. And we used to have the respite, so 1 weekend a month respite. But this now stopped since he moved to residential college. Right, the personal budget options. So once you get the personal budget, you don't have to administer it if you don't want it. So there are 3 options. So local authority basically can purchase the services directly, and then they manage the budget and organize everything for you. I'm not sure they're too keen on it, but they have to do it if you ask them. But this is also the least flexible way to deliver support, because you have the least amount of influence, because you expect local authority to do it, so you can't choose the carer or choose the person, etc. There's also an option for the support provider to basically, for an organization, to manage the money. So once you choose the support, the organization, and they manage the money, and it allows for a little bit more flexibility, as the service can then be subcontracted. And the most flexible option by far, if you're willing to put a little bit of work, is to go for direct payments, because then the money is managed by you, by the parent. So it's either through a prepaid account that is managed by local authorities, so they are keen to do that, because then if you have a surplus on that prepaid account, they can easily take it back, and they can also see how much is in it. Or the direct payments can be paid directly into your bank account, but this bank account has to be dedicated to direct payments, so it cannot be just any bank account. You have to open a special bank account. We opened it in Alex's name, and I managed the money. We had a lot of to's and fro's with local authority until they actually allowed us to do that, because they were very keen to do the prepaid option. But we managed to do it, and it's working very well. You have to do every quarter, every 3 months, you have to do the financial reconciliation to show the local authority how much money is on the account and how is money being spent. Also very often the care and support is a mixture of the above. So for example, we had direct payments for PA hours only, and then the respite provider was actually paid directly by the local authority. We went around, chose the provider, and then local authority pays for it. Okay. So the financial assessment is the last step. So once you get all this done and you finally come to the financial assessment, then local authority wants to know how much is young person going to contribute to their care package. Now, financial assessment is done only for the young person, not for the whole family. Ideally, the young person would have their own bank account in their name or the joint names, it's fine, but only the transaction related, only their benefits are going through the account. But even if this is not the case, this is not a problem. Still, the financial assessment is to be done only based on their finances, not yours. I'm just saying this, I know for the children's, the whole family's financial situation is taken into consideration, but once the young person is 18, it's only their finances. The charging process is different depending which setting the cared for person lives in, whether it's at home or supported living. The capital and savings taken into consideration are within this limit that you can see. However, you should check your local authority. I know Sari, where we live, they had an upper limit of £24,500. They are now doing the consultation to reduce it to the national standard, which is 23,250. But you can check your local authority. And the only other watch out I wanted to tell you is that it's a different financial assessment for direct payments versus paying for a short break. So for us, for example, for direct payments, my son makes no contributions to them, while for his respite, he was paying £15 per night, because they didn't take into consideration any disability-related expenditure. They just said he needs to pay, and we thought, okay, fine, he'll pay. So, so there's a slight difference. I just want to make you aware. Right, these are the principles of financial assessment. So when they do financial assessment, I thought it would be really useful for you to know this, because then it's not all about numbers. Actually, there are certain principles that the local authority has to follow. So it has to be affordable. so that people are not charged more than they can afford to pay. Has to be comprehensive in order to reduce variation in the way people are assessed and charged. To be clear and transparent so people know exactly how they will be charged. The charges should promote well-being, social inclusion, independence, choice and control. It should support carers to look after their own health and well-being and to care effectively and safely. The financial assessment needs to be person-focused, so services are tailored to the individual needs. So the charging rules need to be applied equally so that those with similar needs and services are treated the same. It needs to encourage and enable those who wish to stay in or take up employment, education, or training to do so. Charging policy needs to be sustainable for local authorities in the long term. And the last but not least, charging policy should be administered with a consideration for the mental capacity, either because people lack capacity altogether or are in the process of losing it, so that their rights are still preserved and they can still have their say-so. Right, this is really how the financial assessment is done. So the capital taken into consideration is money on the bank account, savings, cash, and trust fund. If person has anything, if there's a capital below 14,250, it's disregarded, so then it's not taken into consideration. If you have above this, for every £1,000 over the figure, you will pay £4 per week contribution towards your costs. If you are over 23,250, you have to self-fund the care and support plan. For our young people is not applicable, but for older people going through this process, the property is taken into consideration at this stage, whether they own the property or not. Income, so universal credit is taken into consideration, and PIP daily living component. PIP mobility component is disregarded, as well as housing benefit. And any earnings from current employment are to be disregarded. And the statutory guidance explain this because people should be encouraged to work because it's good for their mental health and for their well-being. So the earnings from current employment to be disregarded. Other income that can be included here is interest from savings, payments from the disabled trust fund, etc., any regular income. Now, deductions that are then taken from these are minimum income guarantee. So just before I go into the deductions, it matters whether a person is living at home, which is the first part called non-residential, or it's going into a care home or the residential setting or supported living, in which case it's a different formula. For the non-residential setting, the minimum income guarantee is funds to meet basic needs and promote independence. For aged 18 to 25, you get £89.15 a week allowance. And for aged 25 or older, but less than state pension age, you get £112.50 a week. Then there are also housing costs that are deducted, so things like rent, mortgage, council tax, building insurance. It should be utility bills, but here in Surrey they only deduct water rates. Go figure. Disability-related expenditure is very important. It's any extra cost that the person has to pay because of their impairment or condition. So examples for this, I know Nicola organized the whole session about the DRE, but I will just mention a few examples in case you didn't attend. So things like community alarm, GPS, extra utility bills or laundry costs, hearing aids, wheelchair, extra food. I don't know, Alex, for example, is not able to cook or prepare food, but he loves his food. And so he is forced to eat either ready-made meals or goes to restaurant all the time. And even when he tries to prepare food, he leaves 10 to 20% in the container. and it's just thrown away. So it's really wastage. So I basically claim that as a disability-related expenditure because his fine motor skills are quite poor. Chiropody, breakages. He smashed his computer screen one day because he's rocking while he's listening to music on his computer. He hit it with his head, and we had to basically get a new one. So that's also that's example of breakages. Extra clothing, bedding, etc. So this really depends on each person individually, but I think you can possibly find a lot of examples here. The one thing that I wanted to draw attention to is that savings for disability-related equipment are to be disregarded from the financial assessment. So if person is saving for a wheelchair, for example, then local authority cannot include that into their capital. So that needs to be disregarded. Now, disability-related costs are actually at the discretion of the local authority. And when I was listening to the session about DRE and read a lot of materials about it, some authorities allow certain things and some don't. So what I would encourage you to do is just go and claim whatever you think is disability-related expenditure, and if they don't allow it, so be it. So that's for the first setup. The second one, the residential part, only personal expenses allowance are deducted in theory. The current rate in England is £30.65 per week. So if somebody goes into a care home, all they leave them is £30.65 per week. Now, you can argue this, and you can always claim that the person actually needs more money left because looking into their well-being and their needs and and everything that they want from life. So I think also this is not black and white. I would always challenge it. At the end of this exercise, so when you take capital income and deductions, you are basically left with the weekly contribution figure that person should contribute to their care and support plan. The process is all done online. We received the link, I filled in the numbers, and it basically then after that the finance department follows it up on email or phone, or asks you to send, like Sari allows cleaning and gardening costs, for example, as a DRE. And so they asked me, do I have invoices for gardening and things like that? And if you don't, I just say, sorry, no, I don't. And that's about it. Right. So that was really that was all the theory and the legal part and the whole process, the 4-step process that I was talking about. And now I want to move on to a bit more practical, I guess, bits and a bit of my experience with direct payments and PAs. Right. So direct payments can be used, I mentioned this, in various ways depending on your local authority's policy. You can pay personal assistant. You can either employ them as an employer, or you can pay them if they are self-employed. That's fine as well. You can pay a care agency if you can't find a personal assistant. You can pay for activities in some local authorities, cover the transport cost, and very important, to cover the fees of third-party organizations such as insurance providers and agencies doing the payroll. The spending always has to be approved by your social worker. So to avoid any trouble in the future, if you're not sure, ask the social worker, because then they can't say, we didn't approve it. Have it in writing. For the PS, there is a fixed rate per hour for each local authority. So here in Sari is £13.85. Some local authorities have even higher rate than that, I saw, and some have a lower rate. And then there is another rate for care agencies. So in Sari, I think they pay something like £23.66 for the care agencies on average. And if you find more expensive one, then they ask you to pay the difference. Or if you find it cheaper, then they're happy to pay That's fine. Now, employing personal assistants is not as scary as it sounds. So you are, as a parent, nominated person to basically manage direct payments and act as an employer. There's usually third-party organizations that are involved. So there's a company, agency that helps with the payroll, sets up all the pension scheme, holiday pay, make sure that HMRC is happy. We have a charity here in Sari that provides template contracts and job descriptions and performs DBS checks. And then I have another company that provides me with the employer insurance. It's paid once a year, and then I forget about it for a year. The most difficult part in employing personal assistant is finding a good one. It is very difficult, but it's not impossible. So we found our 2 personal assistants here in the road. I sent a message via WhatsApp group, and 2 young people, one who was in the process of completing their university degree, and the other one who just finished, basically came forward and said they would like to be Alex's PAs. And they were brilliant, especially a young woman who works with Alex. She's been absolutely brilliant. Alex and Hannah are actually like a case study or one of the success stories on Down Syndrome Association website. And you can go and have a look at their video. She was traveling for 9 months, and she made him a video of all their happy adventures. And I cry every time I see a video. It's absolutely amazing. But one thing that I wanted you to know is anybody can be employed as your PA as long as they don't live at your address. So even the statutory guidance and the materials actually say even the sibling can be a PA. If you cannot find a better PA, or you cannot find PA at all, and you desperately need help, social worker can authorize a sibling to be paid as a PA. So don't be afraid to ask. It can be any family, friends, neighbors, anybody who is not listed at your address is automatically can become PA. Then in special schools, there's a lot of teaching assistants who do PA jobs for some extra money. Older children of teachers also do it. You can use your contacts, social networks, just ask around. And also it's very good to have more than one PA, because if you have only one PA and they go traveling or they go they become ill, then it's a big problem, because then you cannot leave the house because there's nobody to replace you. I did try recruiting when Hannah went traveling. I tried recruiting on the online platforms, Indeed, and some others here, 4 or 5 actually I used, and I did not have a good experience, I must say. Took me about 4 or 5 months, and it was a disaster. Candidates were really poor. So I don't know, maybe other people are luckier than me in this respect. Now, top tips I wanted to tell you. So always negotiate. With social worker, always negotiate. Never take their first offer. They love to come and say, oh, how about 4 hours per week sounds? And never accept it. And if they tell you, oh, we can maybe look at it and increase it later, my experience and what I heard from other parents is you need to start the support as you mean to go on, because once you start it, it's really difficult to justify the increase. For them, it's always easy to reduce it, but going up is a nightmare. So make sure that you have the right support from the beginning. The way we negotiated is that the social worker came and said, how about 4 hours per week plus 2 weekend respites a month? And we thought Alex never slept away from us, so we didn't really want 2 weekends respite. So we took one of the respite weekends, converted it into number of hours per PA, and we basically had the package approved like that. So we ended up with 13 or 15 hours for term time per week and 20 hours for holiday time per week. And we were okay with that. So with the caveat, so currently Alex also gets 20 hours per week during holiday time, with the caveat that I said to social worker, if I go and find a job that I want to work, then they would have to increase the hours, and they understand that the carer's right is to work So they would support that. I want to warn you about the use of technology. Our experience is that the social services are now trying to push a lot of technology. It can be useful, I suspect, not for Alex, but the first thing they did is asked us if autonomy would be appropriate for him to learn how to do laundry or cook food or use the microwave and stuff like that. So it's basically an app. And I don't know. I'm guessing they're trying to reduce the costs of social care as well, and it might be justified. I'm sure it helps a lot of people. There's a lot of people who like technology, but just be careful whether it fits the needs of your young person. Don't be pushed into it. Ensure that care assessment is regularly reviewed to accurately reflect the needs and outcomes. This is important. And a top tip I can tell you is for PAs, the contract setup is 0 hours. However, when you're employing a person, they're entitled to just over 12% holiday pay. Now, the agencies like to pay this holiday like a planned holiday. So when they take holiday, they put it into that month. So I had this discussion with them, and we managed to agree that my request was justified, that for the 0 hours contract, the holiday pay should be always accrued. So whatever number of hours they work that month, they get automatically 12% on top paid. And so when I advertise the job, I can advertise it with £15.50 per hour, which is actually then all of a sudden quite a good pay. Tailor the job description to your young person's needs to find the best person. This is really important. So if they need to have a car and a clean driving license, then you must say so. Otherwise, you will not get appropriate candidates. If you cannot find a PA with a given rate, then ask social worker to give you other options. My social worker, basically, the manager told me, well, why don't you look at the care agencies? We did, we tried them. The local authority paid higher rate for the agencies, for this agency that we chose, and it didn't quite work. We didn't quite like it, but they were absolutely fine with paying higher rate to support Alex's needs. Also, if you find that the qualified candidate that you need to employ costs more than the fixed rate of your local authority, then you need to go back to the social worker and tell them that they need to increase the personal budget to match this requirement. And don't ever use the same personal budget for less hours of support. I saw a lot of people try to fit, take the amount of money they're given and then try to get as many hours as possible, whatever they can pay. And then they reduce from, instead of 10 hours that they're given, they reduce it to 6 because they can only afford to pay 6 hours. You should really go back to the social services and say, look, with the money that you gave me, I cannot procure 10 hours. You need to increase my budget so that I can find the person, qualified person that I need for 10 hours. Get everything in writing. I know everybody says this and we all forget, and I forget, but it's really important. For us, social worker disappeared in November, literally overnight, and then we were left to mercy of a duty team, and I ended up talking to 10 different people. So it was really important to have everything in writing. Keep records so that you can remember later. Be wary of blanket policies because they are not, they actually clash with the principle of person-centered approach. And focus on reaching the outcome and be solution-focused. Last but not least, just to go quickly, because I know I've been rattling on for an hour, what to do when things do not go to plan. So what can you do? So you can get advice from local and national charities. There's a lot of charities, a lot of organizations that can help. You can ask them for advice. You can approach your local support groups. You should always offer local authority an opportunity to resolve the issues informally because it's quicker and less stressful for you as a parent. Trust me. We made a complaint once when we couldn't sort out the respite. We made a complaint, and then it turns out it was investigated by the manager that we named in the complaint. which was a bit of a shocker, but it was really good because the manager helped us secure the setting that we wanted. So that really worked. If that doesn't work, then you can escalate to the local government and social care ombudsman. You can involve your councillors or local MP. And I put seek legal aid, but this is absolutely as a last resort. A lot of our young people might be entitled to a free legal aid. However, most of legal aid is super expensive and very slow and very, very stressful for parents. So if you can avoid it and sort it out with local authority, I would encourage you to do so. So that's all from my side. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you haven't fallen asleep.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you, Mirjana. That was really comprehensive. So thank you for that.